Today I'm going to teach you 6 tips on how to make the most of therapy. This is going to be part of my bipolar series, but these tips can be applied to anyone with any mental condition and to any form of therapy as well. So I'm just going to get started. I don't want to waste your time, so we'll start with number 1. So number 1 is go when you're feeling good and well, as healthy as you can. A lot of people want to embark in therapy when they're not feeling well and actually lose interest in the therapy process when they're feeling better. But the research has reliably shown that it's much better to engage in therapy when you're in a better way. This is because you're more able to engage in the homework, your cognition is more clear, you see the world in a more realistic way, in the way that the world actually is, as opposed to the way that ecological problems that you're suffering with might lead you to believe. So it's very important to make sure that you go to therapy when you're feeling well, and the benefits will be shown. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is learn about your form of therapy. So for example, if we're going to be doing CBT, learn what CBT is about before you embark in therapy. And this is a really important one, and one that people don't normally spend enough time on. And the way that I like to describe this is, imagine the smartest person on the planet trying to attend an A-level maths class or a university maths class and not knowing that numbers can be added, subtracted, divided and multiplied. No matter how smart that person is, they're not going to be able to engage in the class and make the most of the class because they don't know these key important concepts which make up the class. And it's the same with therapy. You can't really make the most out of CBT or any form of therapy until you understand why you're there, why the therapist is leading you in a direction that they're leading you. And once you learn these things, you're able to make much better use of it. And you also are more engaged because you realize the benefits which these things that your therapist is doing with you can have on your life. So that's point number 2. Number 3 is the importance of rapport, because in number 2 I've sort of discussed about the role that we have. We've got to come in with knowledge, but at the same time we need to make sure that we've got a good, positive relationship with our therapist, and that's where rapport comes in. Essentially what rapport is the ability to feel like you can be open with your therapist and that you can have an honest relationship with them. So people often confuse rapport with how much you like your therapist, but it's not quite that simple, because it's possible for you to like your therapist a lot but not be able to be open with them. For example, if you've had some abuse in your childhood from a male figure, you might not feel open or able to open to a male therapist. And having that level of self-awareness is really good, because then you could say to yourself, okay, maybe I should try to approach a female therapist, and maybe that would be able to help me further, or vice versa, whichever direction you go into. And really thinking about these things before going into therapy, when you're selecting which therapist you want to work with, is incredibly important. So that's number 3. Number 4 is probably one of the most important ones, and that is to go for the right reasons. There's a million reasons why you could decide to embark on therapy, but the most important thing about making that decision is that you do it for you. It's gonna have limited benefits unless you're really going because you want to improve in the way that you feel in your relationships, or to lessen the symptoms of a particular disorder. If you go in with a positive viewpoint that you want to go in to help yourself, you're going to be able to experience the benefits. So really try and spend time thinking about, why do I want to embark on this? Why is it so important to me? And reflecting on this before you embark, and also between sessions, so that you keep up that motivation and you keep up the desire to want to get the most out of it. So number 5 is to do the homework. Homework is incredibly important, especially in CBT, but in all forms of therapy, to be honest, because in the therapy room, you're in a room with a therapist. That's not really real life. Of course, it's part of real life, but there's a huge aspect of life that, you know, your social relationships, lots of different things, your work environment, your morning routine, etc. Your therapist isn't going to be there with you while you're embarking on these different activities. So it's very important to apply what's learned in therapy to real life and to spend time engaging in your homework. And doing so will build in the rapport in the relationship with the therapist, and it will help make sure that you're actually using the principles that you're learning in your real life so that you can make these adaptations and make these improvements. So finally, get a therapy blueprint. So this is, very much using CBT model, but to be honest, I believe that a therapy blueprint would be useful for any form of therapy. So a therapy blueprint is all of the things from therapy which you want to remember and apply in your life. And no matter what form of therapy that you do, you can jot down as you go, what is the most important thing that I've learned in today's session? What's the thing that I want to carry with me, so that 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the line, I can remember these things and make sure that I still apply these principles, so that you're still making the best out of your therapy. So those are 6 things on how to make the most out of therapy. But I guess I just wanted to finish this video because that's very much applying to everyone. I want to finish this video by talking specifically to people with bipolar disorder on therapy and essentially how to manage it and the most important principles to learn from it. So CBT for bipolar disorder is probably the most prevalent form of therapy that you're going to get for bipolar disorder. And when you're embarking on CBT, you're going to have to learn your triggers, your early symptoms, and then make your action plans. In the previous video, I mentioned a little bit about know your triggers, know your early symptoms, and that's very much to do with understanding which stresses are and which changes in your life often cause you to experience early symptoms, and then the early symptoms that you have prior to going into a bipolar episode. But I'll send a link to the description below if you haven't seen that before. But in terms of the action plans aspect, so once you recognize that you've got your triggers and your early symptoms, you step in. You step in as soon as you see a trigger or as soon as you see an early symptom, and then you act upon an action plan. And this is one of the things that would happen within the therapy room and discuss there, but you can do it yourself even now. You can come up with action plans. And action plans could be something like, okay, if I feel like I'm going a little bit up or I feel a bit triggered, then I'm going to contact my therapist. I'm going to question whether I should start taking a PRN medication or a medication which I can take when I need extra sleep, if you're struggling with sleep at that particular period of time. You can decide to start guided meditations. Lots of different types of self-soothing activities which can help you to manage yourself and manage your mood and manage your stress so that you don't relapse into episode. So action plans are incredibly important, and spending time coming up with ideas on activities that can relax and make you feel better, and so that you don't go into the highs, and also coming up with plans on how to keep your social environments active, and keep yourself feeling some joy in your life and being kind to yourself when you feel you might be going on the low. So that's a little bit on that. We're going to go much more in depth into that in the next week's episode when we talk about being your own psychologist. But I just wanted to finish this video with some tips specific to people with bipolar disorder, because I realised that it's a course on bipolar disorder. And yeah, I hope that you found that very helpful. Again, if you want to have a more in-depth look into these topics, I've discussed all of these things very much more in depth within my book, Winning the War with Bipolar. And I hope that if you can't get enough from these own videos alone, that you can make sure that you get a copy and make the most out of that. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this, hope that you've gained something from this, and I look forward to seeing you next week.